Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the presenter series. We're getting ready for the IACT IMDHA HypnoExpo 2022 here in Orlando, Florida in May, just around the corner now. And each night we interview, or each night of this series, rather, we interview two presenters that are doing pre and post-conference programs at the convention. And tonight, our first guest is none other than Sherry Gilbert. And Karen, I am going to introduce you, my co-host Karen Hand here.
Hello, hello.
Let you take it away.
All right, and let me then introduce Sherry Gilbert because it's such a treat to do so. Sherry is compassionate, she's empathic, she is interesting to listen to, and I didn't read any of those things from her bio. So now let's look at what has been written about her. Sherry's been a certified hypnotherapist and relationship specialist since 2001. She's the founder of Illum
Illumilife.
Life. I'm sorry.
Right.
Life, and and I'll ask you a little bit more about that in a moment. And is a faculty member for the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. Sherry has a passion for teaching and mentoring. She's proud to have received the 2016 Hypnotist of the Year Award from IACT, as well as the Chapter of the Year Award for the International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association chapter that she co-leads. So how cool is that? Sherry's going to be doing a one-day post-conference. It'll be on Monday, May 16th. And it's hypnosis for it's a 6 week smoking cessation for groups. Gosh, I love this topic, Sherry, because so many people think you have to work one-on-one on everything. And gosh, there's so many things that are great to work with in groups, i.e. smoking cessation. Used to do a lot of groups on this, but I got a question for you. Do enough people still smoke to do group work in this area?
Yeah, I look up the numbers every year before I teach the class to update the information. And, we still have over 480,000 smoking related deaths every year in this country. And there's still over 30 million people who smoke. The numbers are a little bit more confusing now because of vaping. So there's also 8 million people who vape, and how many of them are crossover, it's hard to say. But still, let's say conservatively 36 million people that are your potential clients. So I think that's enough potential clients out there for all of us to be doing this work.
That's a great point. And those, we're not talking apples and oranges, vaping, all of that stuff. We're all talking, it's all smoking.
Yes.
It's all smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the nice things about that 36 million smokers is if you go to restaurants and things, they all hang out in the same area.
This is true. This is true. And I was really interested to find that there's a lot of research now that shows that there are people who are doing both. I used to think it was kind of a one or the other thing, but there's a lot of crossover now where they'll smoke regular cigarettes in situations where that's acceptable, but then they'll vape when they're out in public because it's weirdly enough more socially acceptable to vape. I'm not quite sure why. There's still a lot of secondhand stuff coming out, although there isn't as much research on that secondhand pollution as with traditional cigarettes. So,
is it different when you're working with a vapor as opposed to a smoker? Because it really does feel different.
Well, but it's still nicotine addiction that you're working with, and the habits around what they're doing. So the behavior modifications might look a little bit different, but the sessions themselves are pretty much the same. They're still inhaling, they're still going through their rituals, they're still using nicotine at prescribed points in time where that's a habit as well. And we still have to get them off the nicotine. It's pretty much the same thing.
So let me ask about then marijuana, which of course is also smoking. Mm-hmm. Do you treat that as an addiction? And we're going to get into groups in just a moment, I promise. Let's talk about smoking while we're here, because I'm guessing, Sherry, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that anything someone learns in your course here can be applied to one-on-one work as well,
Oh,
can it not?
100%, 100%. I just do the class for groups because it's easier to take the group out of it and use it one-on-one than it is to add group on your own later on. So that's the only reason I teach it as a group, to make it easier for people to do with it whatever they want to do with it.
So let's
I'm
talk
not
about
sure.
pot smoking for a moment, if you don't mind. Do people become addicted? Is that an addictive thing? Do you treat it as
Yes.
addiction? They're addicted to marijuana?
Yes, yes, you can become addicted to any substance, and there are people who are addicted to it. Marijuana is an interesting topic, though, because some of the people coming in that want to stop vaping or stop smoking are going to continue using marijuana. So we have to be thoughtful in the way we language that. But then I do have clients that come in specifically just for I want to get off using marijuana, and that may be smoking it or using edibles or something. And again, I use, you're going to change the languaging a little bit if they're using edibles rather than actually inhaling it. And there's so many ways for people to use marijuana now. And actually usage has gone way up in the states like mine, where it's now legal. And so what people didn't realize, the old people like me who, back in the day, we actually played with that stuff. It's a different substance now. So I'm actually finding a lot of people who didn't realize it's a whole new ball game out there, and they've really gotten themselves into some addiction situations. So I'm actually seeing a lot of that in my practice right now.
Wow. I kind of want to step back for a minute because you were talking about groups very, very quickly. And one of the things that I know seems to be true in weight loss programs, for example, is sometimes just the experience of other people, involved in sharing their stories together or their experiences together seems to add something to the effectiveness of a group. Is that also true with smoking?
I would say even more so, because the camaraderie of it is so helpful. And oftentimes with these groups, you can get the people who work together and smoke together to come in, the family that smokes together to come in. But even if it's a group of people who've never met, now they've got this support system that they can connect with. And I have found that when the pandemic started and I switched to doing online classes, doing it through Zoom, I was a little concerned that camaraderie would shift and change. And I actually found it was even stronger because they were just very comfortable connecting by Zoom, by phone, by text, and just using the digital world to stay attached. So that support system is a huge piece of it. And they've got someone to call if, gosh, I'm having a really bad day. And I know last week in class, we talked about this kind of behavior modification and I'm struggling with it, or I found myself going and eating a whole pizza today. I need some help. And that support is right there. And I think that's huge. And then they continue to support each other well after that 6-week class series ends.
Sure.
I
And
can't
not, and
help
not
but
only similar. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just went real quick. Let me ask. I can't help but wonder, Sherry, if the eating the whole pizza comes in tandem with marijuana, and that kind of you can do some cross plugging or cross work with those. Sorry.
Well, or the weight management piece.
Right.
Kind of my approach is that you have to work with what's underlying to the smoking to begin with. What's the stress? What's the anxiety? What's the habits? Then you deal with the actual smoking, and then you got to deal with because it's normal to gain 7 pounds, 8 pounds, but then we need them to be eating super healthy too. And this ends up typically being a health journey for them. Maybe it didn't start off that way. That their spouse wanted them to stop smoking, or their doctor told them they needed to do it, or whatever, but they end up discovering how easy it can be to take control of their health and be in charge of their health. So it's very fun how this often turns into a longer journey for them, where now they're going to exercise and they're going to drink more water and they're going to eat healthier, and I just love it because that's crucial for everybody's well-being.
When I first heard that there were edibles for marijuana, I thought they meant pizza. That's
That would sell, I'll bet.
that's what I was thinking. So the other thing about groups that occurs to me, and it's interesting that you mentioned this about common, sort of shared experience. But I think there's also, and I wonder if this is true, and I'm taking advantage of your expertise here. Is there also some kind of what do I say, like a peer pressure?
Peer pressure, sure.
Like a weigh-in at Weight Watchers, for
Yeah.
example, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I actually find it can be really supportive, but also on the other side of it as well, because it's not an uncommon thing as you're changing a habit or you're releasing an addiction for there to be, a day where you didn't do so well, a day where maybe for 3 days in a row you didn't smoke at all, and today you smoked half a cigarette. To have that acceptance, because we've talked about it in the group, and when they go and call their friend and say from group and say, hey, this happened and I feel kind of bad about it, that the other person says, hey, let's remember we talked about that, it's okay, that was 5 minutes ago, you're back on track right now, so let's get right back on track. So not only do they have some peer pressure to be the most successful one, but they've also got a lot of nurture and support if they stumble, because it's not unusual for people to stumble.
And can you mix groups? I mean, you don't have to have separate groups for pot smokers and vapors and
No.
tobacco users. They can, it's all the
I,
same.
I mix them all up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, now sometimes it ends up being that everybody vapes because that's the particular group that came in, or everybody's using marijuana and wanting to get off marijuana at the same time. It kind of depends on where they've come from. Sometimes the groups show up all together. I work with quite a few doctors who send me people, and sometimes they've kind of grouped them, but I don't really care. It's the same thing, and you can alter the language in any of the scripts and to accommodate whatever somebody's situation might be.
I've heard it said uh, that it takes for most people like several attempts, and I can't remember what the number was now, but like you just quit cold turkey, or whatever it is, and that folks will say, yeah, it took me like 5 times or 7 times or something like that. And I know, of course, with hypnosis, I'd like to believe, and I'm sure you're going to support this position, that certainly cuts through that and can make it easier. But I also think with hypnosis, and tell me if I'm right about this, when they come to see you, you're not the first attempt. That they've probably struggled with this a bunch of times, and they really need something special that you have to offer them.
Yes and no. Yes, in that the majority of the clients that coming in, this is their third, fourth, fifth, 13th
Yeah.
walk down this road, and finally we're going to get it right. But also because so many of my clients come from doctors, this is sometimes the first time that they've decided, all right, I'm gonna do this, and so it can be their first attempt too. It really doesn't matter, because what we want to do is address all of the situations that could trip them up, so that they don't have to go through that and not have to do a second, third, fourth. And that doesn't mean that if something changes in their life next year and they find themselves tempted, that they shouldn't come back and do a session. They absolutely should. They'll have a recording they can listen to, but they could also come back and do a session. But we have to look at all the different pieces of it, the addiction to the substance itself, the habits that are around it, what's the story that you tell yourself around the usage, what are the coping skills and mechanisms you need to have in place, so that when those trigger points happen for you that normally send you to the vape pen or to your cigarette, that you have something else that you're going to do. And that's so deeply ingrained and habituated for you that it doesn't even occur to you to go buy a pack of cigarettes. So you have to address so many different things. And that's the advantage of doing this in a class type situation, even if you do it with an individual, because each week you're going to cover something else to make sure we've got all those I's dotted and all those T's crossed for them.
Yeah, and
So,
I like that you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to ask. I think you've answered it in the sense that how did you happen to come to come up with this notion that it's a 6-week protocol, for example. And so it's a different aspect each week. Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's how long it typically takes me to get all the different things focused on and get them. Usually they're going to have their quit date if they don't want to stop right away. They're going to have their quit date within 21 to 30 days. And so then we've still got a couple of weeks after that to be putting a nice, beautiful bow on everything for them. So some people don't need the full 6 weeks, but they're in a group, so they keep coming, and then we know for sure they've got the support that they need. And I do occasionally have someone who's got a lot of complex stuff coming on in their life that will then transition them at the end of the group into some private sessions to deal with things that are not so easy to talk about in a group setting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the same or if it's different. When you're working with an individual, is it the same number of sessions as it is when you work with a group? And to follow up with that, how many sessions?
So I typically tell the individuals to plan on 6 sessions as well. On a couple of occasions, I found that, look, we're really done. This person was, the lovely thing of having done this for as long as I have is some people come in so convinced that all I'm going to do is just kind of look into their eyes and it's all going to be done, that sometimes just that walking into my office that first time has hypnotized them enough that they're done. So occasionally I don't go through all of the bells and whistles with people, but I want them prepared for all the bells and whistles, because more often than not you're going to need them.
So typically in group settings, you're doing 6 sessions.
Yes. And I will tell an individual to plan for that many as well.
About how long? Yeah, I understand that. How long do you meet? An hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours?
2 hours. Yeah.
In person or on Zoom, it doesn't matter.
Correct. Yeah. We're going to spend the first half of that in a coaching model, and all of that's laid out so they can just follow the step by step by step. And then the second piece of it, that they're going to be in hypnosis.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about this next thing that's in your talking points to us, and that is, I run the stress management program, right? And so one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is the role of oxytocin in stress management, and I see it here in your notes. So what can you tell me about oxytocin as it relates to smoking cessation?
Well, I love, I've tried to take your class and I always end up with a conflict. So I'm so thrilled to hear that you are actually covering oxytocin, because I've been doing a really deep dive for the past maybe year and a half or so on oxytocin. I work a lot with trauma and anxiety. And so we've been doing a lot of, how do we use hypnosis and coaching to increase a person's oxytocin, and having some really great results with it. So then you start looking at, so what else can it do? Right? So it's good for pain management. And the research for smoking cessation is teeny tiny. And I think the study was not designed very well, but it still had positive result. So my thinking is, let's use that as another tool. So I'm a huge fan of using scent anchors and breath work in session, and it's for homework for the clients as well. So we've started incorporating a lot of that. There are certain essential oils, lavender, neroli, jasmine, Roman chamomile, clary sage, and sandalwood, that are actually been shown to increase oxytocin for the client. So if you're going to do a scent anchor anyway, do either a blend of some of those, or just an individual one on there. One member on my team is actually working, she's very talented at making essential oil blends. So we're looking for a specific blend that we're going to be using for clients that we want to increase their oxytocin. But any one of those would be helpful. And if anyone at the end of this wants to email me for the list, I'm happy to give it to them. But yeah, so what the terribly organized study that they did showed, and they only gave them 2 doses of oxytocin, and they used the intranasal version of it, is that it really did help people stop smoking, because we know that a lot of people use it as stress management, anxiety management. A lot of people even use it to increase the efficacy of their pain management or the efficacy of their depression medication. And so doing that to increase their oxytocin for smoking cessation just totally makes sense as well. So written 1 script so far specifically for that. We're working on using the essential oils to increase that as well. And then we do a handout, which is an article that I didn't write, but it's wonderful, and it's 12 ways to increase your oxytocin. So I'm going to still be exploring more of that. Hopefully we'll have more of it by the time the class is put together. I always like to share something with anyone who listens to this recording or is live with us here this evening. So anyone wants that article that I'm going to include, or they want the script that I've written so far for working with oxytocin and smoking cessation, I'll give you my email address at the end, and you can email me and I'll be happy to send it to you.
Lovely. And for people who really don't know all this stuff about oxytocin, I just want to add that, oxytocin is this thing that is referred to as the cuddle hormone, for example, and because they found out that it's something that gets generated when we hug each other and things like that. But also, here's why it's so beautiful in the stress response, and I think it's so wonderful then with regard to smoking cessation as well, is that by nature, oxytocin is it's your body trying to help you in a difficult situation. And one of the ways that it helps us is it makes us social. And whenever we offer support to other people or receive support to other people, oxytocin is really at play in that kind of thing. So then to take a stressful situation for most people, such as I'm going to stop smoking now, and to incorporate into this notion about being with other people and connected to other people, I just think that's really very beautiful.
Well, and it gives us an out, right? So often that stressful situation, whether it be stop smoking or my boss is being a jerk today, or whatever it might be, we are also habituated to go into fight or flight. And oxytocin is the primary hormone behind moving into the tend and befriend stress response, which is a much healthier stress response, because as you noted, it makes us want to reach out and connect with people, makes it easier for us to connect with people, but it also makes us feel brave and courageous. And who doesn't need to feel brave and courageous most of the time? So I love with what can we do to help get our clients out of fight or flight after 2 years of the pandemic and 2 years of being socially isolated for a lot of people. People are actually really quite deficient in oxytocin. And there's been some research that shows that people who had traumatic or even really, really stressful childhoods don't make enough oxytocin. So, and if we can help them overcome that and increase that level of oxytocin in themselves, we can help them not just manage their stress, not just stop smoking, but really change the dynamics of their life overall, which is beyond exciting.
In your course, because groups are different than working with individuals, right? So will you teach things or address things such as, what do you do if the client, if one of the members of the group wants to quit smoking cigarettes but not marijuana? Or if you've got somebody in the group who comes in and is a heckler and says, this isn't working. I mean, will you address those kinds of things?
Absolutely. You have to be prepared for working with those kind of situations. I almost never get a heckler or someone who's got a bad attitude in the group, because one of the things that I do cover is, how do you pre-screen and how do you make sure that everybody's a good fit for doing this? And but let's say someone slips through, right? And so they get in under the radar, they get in there. We absolutely have to be able to navigate that, and we can actually role play that a little bit. But it's really just about having great boundaries. I read recently that people that are the happiest, most generous, and most compassionate are the people with the best boundaries. And I loved that because I like to consider myself, I'm the self-proclaimed queen of boundaries, right? I think boundaries are everything. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about in the group is set a boundary. What are you willing? Boundaries are for you. They're not for the other people. What are you willing to accept? And what are you unwilling to accept? And if someone behaves in a way that you are unwilling to accept, we need to be comfortable saying, thank you so much for coming. I'll be giving you a prorated refund, and I'd like you to not come to the next class.
Yeah.
And just be just that simple. And I know probably somebody listening to this just had something get triggered inside of them. And I get that because I used to be that people pleasing person, but you can't please everybody. And that's just a true life thing. But in groups in particular, you have to look at the health and wellness of the whole group and your energy level in doing it. And if you're going to hate even walking into that group because you've got someone who's going to be difficult to work with, you need to nip that, and you need to nip it right away. And I will tell you, your practice is the best place to learn how to set healthy boundaries. So yeah, we'll cover that for sure.
Now, here's the thing, though. As Karen mentioned that, she said, maybe a heckler or something, and I really appreciate that. And you might need to deal with that stuff. But here's a little nuance on it that I'm curious about, and I hope you don't mind me pressing you on this point. Sometimes you might have see, when you're working one-on-one, you've got your client wherever they are. And whatever's going on with them, and you can move it in the direction that you want it to go. But when you've got several people lined up, and a couple people are here and a couple people are here, and it isn't that they're hecklers so much as that they're just really having a terribly challenging experience. And I'm wondering what kind of impact that has on the people that are doing really well, or vice versa, by the way.
Right. So what I typically find is that the people that are a little further ahead in the situation start taking care of the people who aren't. They kind of start supporting each other and helping each other. Weirdly enough, it happens more so on Zoom. I would have thought it would be the opposite than in person. I think people feel braver in the Zoom situation than they do sometimes sitting next to each other in my conference room. And that's lovely. And I've even had a couple of times where somebody sent me a little text message saying, hey, can I take so-and-so and go into a breakout room for 5 minutes? And I'll just, without saying anything, just move them into the breakout room. I don't even ask what they're going to talk about. And it all works out just fine. But if it doesn't, if there's somebody there that's presenting a challenge, it goes back to the boundaries. And because I set really healthy boundaries, I feel really comfortable being loving and nurturing and compassionate to that person. So I'm going to ask them to stay after, and I'm just going to talk with them, and I'm going to see how they're doing and what's going on, and support them. And maybe they need to move into an individual session. Maybe they just need a little extra love and support that I might give them. Maybe there's something going on that's outside of the scope of what we're talking about, and they just need to download that. So, we can just be curious and explore it, and then decide what we want to do together.
It's kind of a wondrous thing that happens too, is it not, Sherry, when you tell somebody, don't come back. I will give you a prorated refund and don't come back. And I have had several clients that I have fired who suddenly, oh, no, I'll do it. Oh, no, I promise. Give me one more session and I promise I'll do it this week. I'll promise and show it to you. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky. I have the benefit. I have a team. And so if I'm going to let a client go, and they had that response, Karen, that you were just talking about, no, well, I'm not going to have you back in my practice. I will go to someone in my team. If you want a fresh start with somebody, we can absolutely have you do that. I'll go see, who in my team has space in their practice for you. And now they walk into that next person's session and they're on point. So it doesn't happen often, but on those rare occasions, it's a blessing. So if you aren't lucky like I am to have a whole team, then who's a colleague that you guys can do this back and forth, that their practice is close enough to yours, that you practice similarly enough that it makes sense to do that.
I will admit, I've had 2 clients over the course of my career that I would not foist off on any colleague. I mean, that does happen too.
Yes, yes, I have had one in the last year that I would not give her a recommendation for anyone, because I just couldn't, in good conscience.
Boundaries.
Yes.
It's like you were talking about, Sherry, boundaries, because
Yes.
sometimes that does exist. And if we say to ourselves, oh, I've got to find somebody who can help this person, that's what we end up doing. We're shoving it off to somebody who doesn't.
Yeah, I'm very clear that I'm not personally responsible for anybody's well-being, that I am a guide, and I am more than happy to shine a light wherever they need a light shined, but I'm not personally responsible for them.
Earlier you mentioned this, and I'd like to, we just mentioned it very, very quickly, and I'd like to hear a little more. What if you got a client who comes to see you and they say, well, I'm actually here for 2 things. I want to stop smoking, but I want to lose weight as well. Might as well, while you got the hood up,
Yeah. Just fix it all. Sure. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm not an auto mechanic, so it doesn't work that way. And that's exactly what I would say in that situation. But I would explain that there's a process to how this works. And it's crucial that we do it in this order. And I'll take maybe 5 or 10 minutes and explain why. But the process is, we're going to deal with your stress and your triggers. Then we're going to deal with smoking cessation. And when you're fully done with smoking cessation, then we can look at weight management if you feel the need to do that. But if I do weight management with you now, and then you start stopping smoking, and you do what a lot of people do, which is gain 5 to 7 pounds, you're going to be frustrated because you worked so hard to release that weight. And now you've put a couple of pounds back on, and you're going to go back to smoking. And I don't want you to do that. So this is the tried and true. We do one thing at a time. It's a domino effect. And if you'll trust me, we'll do the domino effect, and we'll get you where you want to be.
Lovely.
If you don't mind, walk me through a little bit. If I take this course, it's a 1-day post-conference, right? It's the Monday after the conference. Kind of walk me through what we'll be doing in that 1 day from start to finish. I'm guessing you already said role playing, so I'm looking forward to where that's going to happen.
Yeah, we're actually going to literally go through, and we have to do it quickly. We're going to go through all of the interactive pieces of each of the classes. So we'll cover the syllabus is written. It literally everything you need is right there. You could just open it up and read your class if you had to, if you were just kind of out of it that day. So, but the interactive pieces, the pieces that are going to be new to students in the class, we actually do them. And sometimes it's going to be an individual activity. Sometimes it's going to be a role play activity, because I want them to understand why I've chosen these different activities in there. So we're going to play with them. We're going to have some fun with them. Then we're also going to talk about why the scripts are the scripts that I've chosen for each of those, and what alternatives they may want to do. There's some alternative scripts in there based on the group itself, how they may want to change that dynamic based on the group. But what my thought process is, why this is the way that it is. So we're going to go through. So it's got to kind of keep it rolling. But they'll have the full syllabus. I do make it available in a digital form, because I know a lot of people don't want to carry all that paper back with them. So I do have it printed so that we can work with it in the classroom, but then they'll have it in digital form so that they can play with it. And we'll even touch on marketing a little bit. So yeah.
You got to get the word out there somehow. So that's a great thing. Two of my favorite things that you said, you're going to work on marketing, because if they don't know you're there, they're not going to come to your group. And the other was the pre-talk, the pre-setup, the pre-work that's done, because screening them into your group or your practice, as opposed to just saying, I'll take everybody. So you're going to spend a lot of time on both of them, not a lot of time, but as much time as the day will allow on those two things, right?
Yes, yes, because if you don't have well, if you don't have any clients coming, you've wasted a day of your time coming to my class, and B, if you're not pulling the right people in, some of them need to be diverted into individual sessions. Some people shouldn't be coming at all, so you have to be able to filter that through.
Do people that take your class tend to become sort of specialists at smoking cessation, or?
It depends. I have had people that kind of turned it into like the major part of their practice. It's not my entire practice. I work on a lot of other things. I just get a lot of requests for it, and I enjoy doing it. Honestly, it's one of the reasons why I started doing groups, because I didn't want it to take over my practice. So if I can see 12 people in a group, that opens up space for clients that really do need individual work, because we're healing trauma. I'm also a relationship coach, so I work a lot with collaborative and mediated divorce cases, and so certain times of the year I'm just so crazy busy that being able to put people in groups is a relief.
And will you make some recommendations for pricing? It's one of the big questions that always comes up.
But what I actually teach people is how I do my pricing, because it depends on where you are. So I can tell you my price, but it may be irrelevant for where you are. So I walk people through how I determine how my prices are set, because every year I have a process that I go through. I hire someone to call 10 to 14 people in the area who do something similar to what I do, find out how long their sessions are, what they charge. We go on and read their Yelp reviews and things like that if they have them. And then we make this whole spreadsheet and figure out what my team and I should be charging. So, because we always, our goal is to stay in the top third of what's current and local. So I teach them my process, because I think that's more valuable than just knowing what I charge.
So you mentioned earlier that you had a lot of smoking showing up in your practice, and did it seem better for you to do groups than to have to see all those people individually? Is that the primary thing that got you doing this, or I mean, do you have? How am I asking you? I'm wondering what kind of skin you have in the game, or some sort of what called you to do this?
My mother smoked from the time that she was 15 years old. She stopped smoking about 2.5, 3 years before she died of smoking related cancer. And I just feel like families shouldn't have to go through that. When my mother started smoking at 15 years of age, we didn't know. Nobody knew, right? And by the time that she knew that it wasn't okay, she was so addicted. She did try and stop smoking one time. I was in second grade, so I couldn't hypnotize her, and had a really traumatic set of experiences that happened at that same time, unrelated, but happened, and it convinced her she should never, ever stop again. And so until she was too sick to actually smoke, she smoked. And I watched it kill her for many, many, many years. And I just, if I can keep one family from not having to go through that experience, then that's a gift.
Yeah, beautiful. That's really nice to hear. My father smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Actually, I myself got up to that point, when I was a smoker. So I appreciate that. But he was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and he stopped smoking. This is just a weird paradox here. He stopped smoking as soon as the Surgeon General's report came out. Wow. And he did it. The funny thing is, I know that he struggled. I wish he'd known Sherry Gilbert, but there was one thing about my dad, is that he was as stubborn as he could possibly be. And so the day that he quit, he told people, God damn it, this stuff will kill you. It says right here on the box, and and all of that stuff. And he just put it down, and come hell or high water, there was nothing that was going to make him smoke again. even how miserable he was. And I'm just thinking, wouldn't it have been nicer, if there was a way to do that without having to,
If you could have done it a little more gently. But I will tell you, being stubborn is such a gift. I have my whole childhood was kind of dinged for being stubborn, but I will tell you, just like for your dad, there are times that it has totally saved my bacon. So I kudos to your dad for being so stubborn that he said, I want to be here. I have life to live and I'm going to be here to live it.
My father's motivation was a little more material. He quit smoking when they went up to 25 cents a pack. He says, I'm not paying that. And what do people pay for cigarettes now?
I know.
5 cents a pack, man. Nope, he was never, and he never did. He never bought another one.
But back when it was 25 cents a pack, I will say 25 cents was more money than it is now.
Yes,
So.
it was, but still, in
That's
such
true.
a position to it now. Before we leave, Sherry, I've really got to have you give us your email address because you promised us.
Yes. So email me. I've got a few things I would love to send you to thank you for taking your time to listen to me. It's Sherry, SHERRY, at illuma.life. I'm going to spell that for you. ILLU, M as in Mary, I.life, LIFE. There is no .net, there is no .com, it's .life. That throws a few people off. So.
Right, nice. By the way, one last thing that I want to mention is that on Saturday during the conference weekend at 2 p.m, Sherry's also going to be doing her 1 hour or 40-minute or 50-minute or whatever it is, 1 hour presentation on her kinetic house tree person drawings. And
that's going to be so much fun. You have to come play with us.
It is, in fact, it is great fun and really insightful. So, so if you're not going to be able to stay around for the smoking program, but you're at the conference, check out Sherry's drawing seminar as well.
Yeah, come say hi. We're gonna play with crayons. It'll be a blast.
All right.
I'll be there for sure.
Well, thank you very much. It's been lovely talking with you, Sherry. Our time has flown, so we wish you well. Of course, feel free to hang out. As you know, I'm going to stop the recording now, however, so we can start it again afresh for our next presenter. And come and see Sherry Gilbert, 6-day smoking cessation. Well, it's a 1-day program.
It's a 1-day workshop.
1-day workshop on her 6-day smoking cessation, 6-session smoking cessation program for groups, and at the HypnoExpo 2022 right here in Orlando, Florida. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.